Hello, I am the Flawless Walrus, and welcome to another Death Battle prediction video, but first we have Frieza vs. Megatron. This one is probably, I would say, the most divisive episode this season so far. I would say that there's the highest quantity of people in the more close-knit community who are considering this one to be wrong. And I can definitely see why. There was kind of a lot of stuff that was left on the table, with kind of not adequate explanation as to why. The biggest thing with this fight is that it did come down to speed above all else. They specifically said that Frieza was stronger, but Megatron would be able to kill him with the antimatter, but he was too slow to do so. So that means whichever one was faster was going to be the one who won. So the fact that there were several speed feats that were kind of just left there, it leaves a bit of a poor taste in a lot of people's mouths. It's not just a matter of them just not being mentioned. They were actually mentioned in the episode. They were not used, though. They basically said that there are higher feats that exist, but they're not consistent with the primary canon, which is not terribly good to go with as your explanation when it comes to a character like Megatron for Transformers in general. Because one of the big things is that ultimately a lot of these feats just straight up are part of the main G1 canon, or are part of a series that the main G1 canon has crossed over with. So either more time should have been taken on why they were excluded, or they really should have been included. There was no reason for them not to be. From what I know, it was mostly a matter of what people are familiar with and how people would react to Megatron winning because of some outside thing that they're not as familiar with. I really don't like that mindset very much. It's largely because of the fact that a lot of the times it is just when you're watching a death battle, there'll be some media that you haven't heard of that ends up being a really big clinching point, and it's kind of cool to see these kinds of things pop up. Overall, though, the animation was really good. Obviously, the voice acting was stellar. And yeah, I don't really have too much to go into. It was more or less a pretty straightforward episode. It was a fairly good one, though, if only for those issues with the verdict and what was excluded. So that brings us to Gojo versus Makima. So this is a really, really fascinating fight, one that I legitimately did not see coming for this year. With the place that the mangas are for both Chainsaw Man and Jujutsu Kaisen, in comparison to their anime, I really did feel like we'd be getting this episode next year, probably closer to the end of next year, so that the anime has at least more of a chance to catch up in terms of the fact that Makima being the main villain isn't as much of a spoiler as it is right now, because there's no real way to go through these two characters' things without spoiling so much of the manga. This is probably the most anime-only unfriendly episodes that they've ever done. And like, what were the most anime-only unfriendly things was us arguing whether or not Mikasa from Attack on Titan should have some things mentioned about the last chapter of Attack on Titan, because it had come out like probably a month before the episode. Compare that to if you know anything about the current goings-on in Jujutsu Kaisen, what happened with Gojo recently. That's a bit of a spoiler that arguably they might need to bring up, and that happened like 2 weeks ago. So ultimately, I'm kind of surprised that we're doing this one now, but it is a very good debate. This fight, almost none of it comes down to strength or speed for the most part, because either way, these two are not going to be dealing with each other through those. It's basically going to be a hack sprawl, and holy shit, what a hack sprawl it is. For purposes of actually bringing up the stats, it seems as though Gojo is a fair bit stronger, but Makima has her crazy regen to make that kind of irrelevant, and she is faster, with there basically not being any anything above, like, I think it was like Mach 15 or something like that. Like, it was pretty slow in comparison to a lot of other verses. And then Makima being low hundreds, if I recall correctly. But either way, now that we have these two characters, it ultimately comes down to what they can both do. And how you actually explain what either of them can do is a bit of a tricky topic, because they are very in-depth powers and very wide-reaching. But I think I'll basically go right out and say that I think that Makima is actually going to be the one who wins. There's a couple of reasons why. One, I do think that a lot of her abilities are going to be able to get past Limitless. And just it being a barrier, essentially, that makes it so that things cannot hit him, does not necessarily matter when what she's using is not based on range. There have been times where she has just looked at someone and then, like, essentially their inner organs started getting fucked up and, like, they started, like, bleeding from the eyes and stuff. So that's something that I don't think that he really has a counter for. And once you start fucking with his brain or his eyes, he's going to start losing a lot of potential in the long run. You also have the fact that not only does she have her vast army of crazy haxy devils, but she can also continually revive them with the zombie devil, which makes it so that she's, unless he completely destroys the devil, which he's fully capable of with the Hollow Purple, for example, he is going to be on the back foot of having a lot of enemies to deal with. And a lot of them will be able to essentially one-shot. For example, the Angel Devil has a life-sapping capability that can basically just drain out someone's life essence. And if they get close, that's basically curtains. Now, albeit, if they get close is basically the specific thing that Gojo counters in its entirety. So it will be a matter of, one, how seriously he takes the fight, because he does not tend to take things very seriously. And then what other things can be done to dampen his capabilities. If the Angel Devil is brought in immediately after she, like, shuts down parts of his brain or his eyes, and he's not able to use his abilities as well, then that might be curtains right there. As for things that he can do to kill her, I think that it is a little bit more limited, especially if you read a little bit more into one of the things that she can do. She has basically a contract that makes it so that whenever an attack or something befalls her, it instead is rerouted to a random Japanese citizen. Now, that's already bad enough, because it means that he basically needs to kill her millions of times for it to actually stick. But the other problem is that he is, in fact, a Japanese citizen. Theoretically speaking, there is a chance that he could kill himself with one of his kills of her. Now, again, that's not exactly a likely scenario, considering the 1 in literal millions of chance that that is of happening. But as they go through the fight, as he keeps doing that, the more likely it becomes that he could actually kill himself with it. I don't think that's going to actually be what ends up being the kill. Because one of the things is that he doesn't seem to very well resist mindfuckery, which I do think is one of Makima's probably better focuses. She's quite good at mental attacks, and I wouldn't be terribly surprised if by the end of the fight he is basically in a contract with her and unable to do anything about it. Because he has apparently not resisted anything notable in terms of mindfuckery, and the fact that his brain resets every so often with his basically regen aspect doesn't necessarily mean that he will be able to break free of the mind control itself. And if so, she could just put it back on. So that's part of it. The other part is that you have to tackle whether or not Gojo would be able to get past Makima's contract aspect that has basically all these Japanese citizens taking the fall for her. And the answer is probably no. The only way that someone was able to get by it was essentially by attacking her in a way that the person did not consider it to be an attack. Now, that is not... Makima did not consider it to be an attack. That was Denji who did not consider it to actually be an attack. he considered it an act of like joining and love, essentially, which made it so that it did not have any maliciousness, and he didn't see it as actually attacking her. Which, in a fight like this, I don't see any situation where Gojo's going to, one, figure that out, and two, be able to really implement it. I don't think he'd be able to do that. He would just be able to, he would see his attacks as being attacks, even if they are not the strongest ones he can muster up. Both of them actually have abilities that allow them to basically funnel information and intelligence into a person to overload them. Both of them actually have this ability, but I would actually say that Makima's is better. Gojo's does it over a length of time, and it is like all the knowledge in the world. Makima's was the knowledge of all existence instantaneously. So if there's anyone that's going to overload someone faster, it's probably going to be hers. And those ones I kind of almost see as equivalent. I think it's possible that it could stun Makima, but I don't see that really helping all that much, all things considered, because he won't really be able to capitalize on it. And there's also the chance that it could be seen as an attack and be redirected to someone at random. So I don't really see that one as being a viable method. Ultimately, this is actually a super fascinating fight, and there's going to be a lot of pissed off people if Gojo loses, which I think is what it's kind of boiling down to. I don't see his abilities as being able to effectively deal with her. She has methods of getting through to him, such as, say, putting mold in his body with the mold devil, which does not require a specific distance or anything like that, so can just do it. And then he also does not take things seriously in the initial parts, and some of the effects from earlier in the fight could lead to him being stifled later on. Both of them at their absolute peaks. I do think Makima is going to end up winning. We've seen a little bit of the animation, and it's looking pretty darn good. We got that movie theater setup that looks super fun. The song itself sounds very good, and yeah, we're gonna just have a real good time with this one, and we will see what's next. And at that, I will see you guys then. Thanks so much for watching, guys.